a bit of introduction. So today we will continue with our first unit. But in the interim, if there are questions, comments, I believe you now have access to the course material. Or there's a challenge with that. Do you all have access to the course material, please?
Yes, sir. We are able to process it on the LMS, please.
Oh, okay. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. And then I got the class list from, I think, Gabriel. Unfortunately, it came without your index numbers. So that is that. So just a recap of what we did from last weekend's meeting. We defined some of these related concepts in procurement, logistics, supply chain, and the rest. So we define what a supply chain is. We also define supply chain management. Then there was a brief definition of logistics. And then we also defined purchasing as well as procurement. And then after the definitions of these concepts, we looked at the objectives of procurement and said that primarily there are two major objectives. We have the primary objectives and then the secondary objectives. But there are some specific objectives. So when we talk about the primary objectives, they are peculiar to the procurement entity or the purchaser. The secondary objectives, on the other hand, are external. They do not directly affect the organization, but indirectly, it affects everybody. So we use procurement system in organizations. It could be private organizations, it could be public organizations to achieve the secondary objectives of procurement. And then we also looked at the scope of procurement. And then I said that procurement, the scope can be categorized into three major levels. We have the operational level, we have the middle level or the managerial level, and then we have what we call the strategic level or the top level activities of procurement. So regardless of where or the level you find yourself, you need to execute what has been given or assigned to you as a procurement officer so that the organization will get the full benefit of the department or unit. And then we also looked at procurement structures. So the structures basically talks about how procurement activities have been organized. So there are two major structures. We have what we call the centralized procurement structure. So centralized procurement structure is where the procurement activities for an organization is performed from or at a central location. Okay, so the organization may have different branches, different units, but once it has to do with procurement and its related activity, it has to be made or performed from one central location. So once you see this happening in the organization, then we can say that the organization is having what we call centralized procurement structure. And then the decentralized procurement structure is where the various departments, branches, or units are given some autonomy to undertake their own procurement activity by way of giving some budgetary allocation. It could be monthly, it could be quarterly or annually. So when you see this also happening in the organization, then the structure the organization is adopting or has adopted is termed as what? A centralized procurement structure. So the organization does not get up and say that we are adopting centralized or decentralized. It is not that straightforward. So we need to actually analyze the pros and cons of these structures. And then you consider which of the structures will best fit or suit the organization. So there are reasons why an organization may decide to adopt a centralized procurement structure or decentralized procurement structure. So I said that the major reason why entities adopt centralized procurement structure is the benefit to, gain the benefit of what? Economies of scale. So once we aggregate procurement needs and then we buy in bulk, there's always the possibility of getting some rebate discount to bring the average cost per product down. So that is the major reason why organizations may adopt centralized procurement. There are other reasons. So once you get the book, I have listed all those things in there. And then for decentralization, there are other reasons, but the primary reason or motive is to give autonomy to the various departments or units so that it will not depend on any central department. Okay, so once maybe you work at HR and you need anything, you just, from your allocation, you just go straight to the market and then procure them. And then we also looked at the importance of procurement. And then we mentioned some of the importance. And then I think we also look at the qualities of a procurement manager. Did we? I said that some organizations, they call whoever is superintending over procurement activities as director of procurement. It could be procurement officer, it could be head of procurement. Forget about the nomenclature. The most important thing is that once you are the head, once you are managing procurement, you need to possess certain qualities. Okay, so the success of your job delivery depends on these skills. One, extensive knowledge, because in procurement, we procure a whole lot of things. Okay, and I mentioned that there are three major areas of procurement. We procure goods, we procure works, we procure services. And sometimes, depending on the industry or the organization, product may be a bit different or distinct. For instance, if you work in a university, obviously, your procurement focus may not be the same as somebody who works as a procurement officer for, let's say, Talu Oil or Anglo Gold Ashanti or Goldfields Ghana. Okay, because these are different organizations. So the organization will determine the procurement needs that will be pursued by the one superintendent or the officers working at the procurement department. So we need to have extensive knowledge because we deal with a lot of stakeholders. We have the internal stakeholders, we have the external stakeholders. Okay, so once you are dealing with all these people, you need to have that knowledge. And then because the procurement needs they differ or they vary from time to time, you need to have that knowledge to be able to manage the situation well. And then the excellent interpersonal skills. I've already mentioned that we deal with a whole lot of stakeholders, primarily with internal stakeholders. Who are the internal stakeholders? Internal stakeholders are the organization or department that are within the organization. Okay, so you maybe mention JCTU. there may be several departments or units. Okay. And these units is what we term as what? The internal stakeholders. They are within the organization. And then we also have external stakeholders. The external stakeholders could be the suppliers, could be the contractor, could be the consultant. They are outside of the organization, the purchasing organization. So we need to have that skill. Sometimes the organization may not readily have resources, and I'm talking about money, to procure urgent items, urgent services. But because of how the procurement officer, the ability to deal with or communicate or relate with these stakeholders, will be able to get these items delivered, and then probably, pay the cost of the item at a later date. And then high research interest. As a procurement officer or manager or director, whoever, you need to have that interest, high research interest, because we do market research, we analyze, and you can only do the best if you have that interest. You don't have to be an armchair procurement person. Okay, sometimes you go onto the market, you more or less evaluate, assess market trends to know prices of goods and services, to know the available products on the market, among others. So research interest is very critical in the procurement profession. And then ethically pure. Ethically pure. In fact, you would take a course in second year, procurement principles. And one of the key principles in procurement is ethics. Ethics, doing the right things, okay? So that the other stakeholders will have, interest and respect for the procurement processes. Once people begin to question how you execute the procurement agenda, will negatively affect the image of the organization. Okay, so sometimes there may be 10 tenders, suppliers, contractors who will be competing. And then almost all the time, you give contract to a company that is owned and managed by your wife. Your wife's company may be overqualified, but the moment it is always that company, people will begin to question, the process. Okay, so that is why we are saying that we need to act, ethically pure, and then to be a strategic thinker. So sometimes you can even decide to buy more of a certain product now, even though there's no immediate demand. But because you are looking into the future, maybe you have, after going through maybe statistics, after going through historical data, after looking at the trends, you anticipate prices for such product to increase maybe in the next quarter or in the next half of the year. So to be able to save the company, then you need to actually buy more now and then use, the product later. To be a team builder, to be a negotiation, to have that negotiation skills. So basically, this is what we did. So let's quickly look at this open discussion. So the term purchasing is often used interchangeably with procurement. Why do you think we sometimes use these two terms interchangeably? And I want maybe two or three people to speak to this issue. You can unmute your microphone and then speak to this issue, please. Are you online?
Yes,
Class,
sir.
are you? Hey.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
You're
sir.
online, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We
Is
are
it
here.
your
Okay, sir. Okay, we
Okay,
are here,
Harrison.
sir.
All right.
All
Go
right, sir.
ahead,
So
Harrison.
please, I think why the two are used interchangeably is the fact that they all involved movements of maybe goods or services from one point to the other. So that is my take.
Okay. Movement of goods from one point to the other. Okay. Good attempt. Any other? Any other? Why procurement and purchasing? Okay.
Sorry, sir.
Kingsley, Mr. Jamra, go ahead.
Yeah, all right, sir. I think also both also deals with one way or the other acquiring items, either services or
Perfect.
goods.
Perfect. Perfect. Wonderful. Okay. Mr. Momoni. You are muted. Unmute your microphone, please. Hey, Mr. Suleiman Momoni, your microphone is muted. Okay, so Madam Rebecca, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So I can
Mhm.
say procurement manages the why and what, and then the purchasing handles the how.
Are you sure?
That is, yes, please. That is the procurement is like the strategy of purchasing, like the
Okay.
strategy. And then purchasing is the execution.
Okay. Okay. All right. So maybe the last one from Matu, I would do. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think both often use interchangeably because they both deals with obtaining goods and services.
Okay.
So yeah, I
Okay.
think
Wonderful. Yeah, wonderful. But do you sing, Ramatu? Do you sing? I think you have a good voice. Oh, can you sing?
no,
Oh,
I don't.
say. Oh, too bad. All right. Maybe the last one, Gabriel.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Okay, sir. So procurement refers to the, let's say, the entire strategic process of buying goods or acquiring goods. So it involves supply selection, contract management, negotiation, and all that. And then purchasing is once you are settled with the particular supplier or services, then when you are going for it, that is where we use the term purchasing.
Okay. I think one or two speakers got the answer correctly. The rest, you deviated because the question is straightforward. And let me hasten to say this. So you need to be very careful with questions. You need to be very careful with questions. You need to be very, very careful. Sometimes you will know the thing, but how you handle questions become a problem. Hey, these teams there. In the morning, I was struggling. I can't find my screen again. Moment, please. Okay. Yeah. So the focus here is, can somebody explain the question itself? The question is, can somebody explain it? Okay, Frederick. Frederick, can you explain the question here?
I'll try. I think the question is saying that why do people often use the two words
Mm-hmm. So, meaning, why do we treat the two terms as one? As one. So we are not interested in the differences. We are interested in the similarities. Similarities between purchasing and procurement. That's warrants people to term or use the two terms interchangeably. So this was the question. So giving us okay, so when you have a question like this, just focus on the similarities. Okay, so any distinction between the two means you have deviated, because we are focusing on what binds the two terms together. The two terms. If, because there's another question here, this one, then you could focus on what the differences. But the first one, you talk about the similarities between the two concepts. So somebody said the two terms, whether procurement or purchasing, we procure goods, wares, and services, and the same applies to purchasing. So that is why, so you not be wrong to use the two terms interchangeably. Okay. And then again, there must be a need, whether it is purchasing, whether it's procurement, there must be a need. You don't just purchase because you have money. You purchase because there is a need. You procure because there is a need. You get it?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So be careful. Be careful with how you respond to questions. I think I can move on to today's task if everything is fine. Okay. So we are looking at evolution of procurement. Evolution. And then these are the two simple objectives: to analyze the evolution of purchasing through to procurement, examine the rake and long model of procurement evolution, and maybe a few others. So when we talk about evolution, the term procurement, to some people, is new. To some people, this is a new area. A friend of mine is in another university. So the other day we were discussing something. They said, "Hey, Fari, your area is great. You know, there are a lot of opportunities there." Okay, so I think it was a positive, comment. Others will say, "Oh, but it is this, it is that." So it is not new. It is not new. The practice is not new. Maybe in terms of academic, then the discipline can be said to be a bit new, but the practice of procurement is not new. In fact, it has been with us for a very long time. We can say that procurement represents a stage in the evolution of civilized human relationships, as it enables a desired object to be obtained by trading rather than conquest, plunder, or confiscation. So many years ago, if an individual wanted to get anything, the person could use conquest. You conquer them. You conquer the one possessing your need, and then you take it. Or you can even steal or confiscate it. Okay, so this is what people, organizations, or countries or societies were using to acquire their needs or what. Okay, but since human civilization started, Then it started with procurement, because at the time, people said, no, if I need something without using conquest, plunder, or confiscation, I can still get it by way of what? Trading. Okay, so that is when the actual practice of procurement started. So whether it is purchasing or procurement, that is when it started. So it is a very ancient activity. It is not new. It is very, very old. And there's an evidence to support this claim. In fact, a cuneiform clay tablet excavated at Ras Shamra, northern Syria, dated about 2800 BC, carries an interesting inscription. So if we go back, we are talking about how many years? About roughly 3,000 years. So 2,800 years before Christ. And then after Christ, how many years now? We are in somewhere 2026. So when you put the two together, about 5,000 years. So 5,000 years ago, there was this excavation activity. Okay, not 5,000 years ago, but when the excavation was done, they found this cuneiform tablet. So this is an example of a cuneiform tablet. So many years ago, people were not using ink and paper to write. They were still writing, but they were using something like this to write. So after the excavation activity, they found something like this. And this tablet had some inscription. So when you translate the inscription, it reads, look at it carefully. The inscription, the cuneiform tablet had this inscription: HST, to deliver 50 jars of fragrant smooth oil each, 15 days after. So there was a starting date. And during the reign of AS, that is the leader at the time. In return, he, so the he here is representing who? The supplier. In return, after the supplier had supplied, these 50 jars of fragrant smooth oil every 15 days, in return, he will be paid 600 small wage in grain. 600. So, in fact, there was no money at the time. So more or less, there was what we call barter trade. Okay, so if you supply this, we'll give you this. If you supply this, we'll give you this. So look at it. This order will continue indefinitely until the purchaser or his son removes his consent. So from this short order, can you tell me the name of the purchaser? Who can tell me the name of the purchaser? I know some of you are into practice, so tell me, who is the name of the purchaser? Can you identify the purchaser here? Oh, I want to hear your voices, so please. I don't like. Okay.
That is.
Is.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. So if you look at this order, it is very similar to a framework agreement. Very, very similar. Okay, because it continues. The contract is more or less, it continues until such a time the purchaser or his son says stop. So until such a time, the supplier will continue to do the supplies every 15 days. Every 15 days. You get it? So this clearly shows that the practice of purchasing or procurement is not new. It is not new at all. Very, very old. And this is not the only evidence, but this one is a solid evidence to support the assertion that procurement is indeed, or purchasing is an ancient activity. Let's look at some development that actually influence the profession, the practice, and then the academic aspect of procurement. So there are about 7 periods here, and some of these activities influence what we are doing today. So we have period 1, and the period 1 is from 1850 to 1900. This does not mean that procurement or purchasing started from 1850. That is not what I'm trying to say. But it gained more academic focus from this period, because I've already given you an instance where about 5,000 years ago, about 5,000 years ago, there's concrete evidence to support this practice. But this is only telling us that these specific activities influence what scholars or practitioners actually do today. Okay, so we call it the early years. The early years. We have the period 1900 to 1939, the growth of procurement fundamentals. That is the name we give to this period. Period 3, 1940 to 1946, the war years. Mid 1947 to 1960, the quiet years. And then it continues till now. So let's look at some key developments in the period I've mentioned. The first period, or period 1, the early years. So by 1866, the Pennsylvania Railroad had given the procurement function departmental status under the title Supplying Department. In 1886, some people were practicing it, even though the title was not procurement. But we obviously believe that that is how it started until we got to, this period. Okay, so a few years later, the head procurement agent at the same institution reported directly to the president of the railroad. So the head at the time was upgraded to report directly to the head of the organization, or the president of the organization. And then he continues. So most of these events happen in the United States. The reason is this: they were capturing most of these events. Other places were doing it, just that we don't have records to show that they were doing this or that. But the activities within this space was properly captured. And then we come to period 2, 1900 to 1939. So procurement gained importance during the First World War because of its role in obtaining vital war materials. And I'm happy we have military men and women and other security, agencies, with us. If you really want to execute the work well, you need certain items, certain materials, like it is happening now. Syria, Iran, and then
Iran,
the US.
Israel.
Yes. So because war was all over, to be able to do well, you need to acquire certain goods, you need to acquire certain materials. So once people or countries were acquiring, then obviously people became more interested to know what goes into the acquisition process. Okay, so we call it the growth of procurement fundamentals. The First World War actually engineered that. And then we came to period 3, 1946. No, 1940 to 1946. The war years. The war years. The Second World War introduced a new period in procurement history. So the emphasis on obtaining required material during the war influenced a growth in procurement interest. So other countries were getting the needed items. Others were struggling. So they were asking, so how come this country was able to get all the needed ammunitions, all the needed food, all the needed supplies, but we were struggling? Okay, so, okay, then we need to look at how we acquire things, how we, procure things, how we even transport them. So that is how people actually focus on acquisition of goods, acquisition of works, acquisition of services. And then we came to 1947 to 1960s, the quiet years. So after the, when you fight, I don't know how many of you have experienced physical fight before. After fighting, and then people come to the rescue, what happens? After going through a serious fight with somebody, and then maybe you were on the verge of losing, then people come and then separate the two of you. After that, what happens? Can you give a typical example? What will happen? What will you normally do after going through a fight with somebody, serious fight with somebody? What will you do? Sometimes you rush to the house. Suleiman, go ahead.
Yes, sir. You go through a recovery stage.
Okay, so you want to rest. Okay, maybe you drink, maybe you take cold water or drink, and then you begin to, service your wounds. Okay, so that is that. After everything, you go back. So we lost this fight. In fact, I received this punch. This thing, I should have done this. So now you think about a whole lot of things. You want to calm things down now. So after the 1940 to 46, the war years, countries, individuals were a bit relaxed. Now people were thinking about themselves. We lost, we won, things didn't go well, things went well. So what actually went wrong and all that? Okay, so the actual procurement things, acquisition was very, very, very low. So that is why we call this period the quiet years. Then we came to period 5, materials management comes of age, mid 1960s to late 1970s. So the mid 1960s witnessed a dramatic growth of material management. So after distractions, after resting, after strategizing, then we need to build again. So once you want to build, because countries were destroyed, economies, society, in fact, every aspect of human lives, people died, buildings were destroyed. And in fact, if you have visited Rotterdam, I don't know whether it is good to have, no, I don't think wars are not good. But if you look at Rotterdam and other places in, let's say, Netherlands, you see that Rotterdam is pretty nice. It is modernized. The city is completely modern compared to other European cities. Why? Because after the World War, I think the Germans destroyed the entire city. Okay? The Germans destroyed the entire city of Rotterdam. So after the war, they started to build the city from the scratch again. And this time, I don't know, they changed everything about the city. So the city of Rotterdam looks beautiful. So I don't know if people should be looking at war. Some countries after war, they don't get up again. They struggle. But the Netherlands managed to build that city. And the city looks awesome. It looks like a North American city, maybe Canada or the US. Beautiful city. Okay, so they were not just in Rotterdam, other places where they all try to build the cities or the countries from the scratch. And once you are building, obviously you procure, you buy, you purchase goods, you purchase wares, you purchase services. And that, influence the procurement. So the behavior of procurement during this period was notable. Yes, it was all over. In fact, the affected countries were doing it. And these countries were powerhouses. Russia, France, Germany, Netherlands, okay, even the US. Okay, when you go to Asia, Japan, all of them, they suffered. In fact, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, or something. These countries, these cities were destroyed. Okay, but now if you go there, it is not like it was in 1945 thereabout. Things have changed. And then we came to period 6, late 1970s to 1999. We call it the global era. So the global era and its effect on the important structure and behavior of procurement have already proved different from other historical periods. These differences include the following. The spread and rate of technology change during this period was unprecedented, with product life cycle becoming shorter, the ability to coordinate worldwide procurement activity by using international data network, and then internet emerged. So we started to talk about something like global procurement or global sourcing. So you are here, you are not limited to the domestic market. You could go outside to procure things. Once, after analyzing, you think that it will be in the best interest of you or the organization or the economy to procure from outside the country, you do that, because procurement is not only about acquisition. We also focus on cost reduction. So once we can get the best deal outside, nothing stops the entity from going outside. So concept of global sourcing actually started from the period number 6, and then it continued to the final stage, period 7, where we find ourselves now, the integrated supply chain. So traditionally, once we talk about procurement, the focus was on the immediate supplier and then the immediate buyer. That was the focus. We are only interested in where we are getting our sources of supplies from. Okay, that is the immediate ones. But the moment we entered period number 7, we said, no, we can't just focus on our immediate suppliers or immediate buyers. We need to look at the entire supply chain, because your supplier also has a supplier. So you may be interested in your supplier. What if your supplier is disappointed by a supplier? It means that your supplier will not be able to supply the needed items. So you need to focus on not just your immediate supplier, but the entire supply chain. So procurement and supply chain management today reflects a growing emphasis concerning the strategic business importance of suppliers. So supplier relationships are gradually shifting from adversarial approach to a more cooperative approach with selected suppliers. Okay, so it is no more adversarial, more or less collaboration. You collaborate with suppliers that are doing something good. Okay, and you are doing that because you are not thinking about just today, you are thinking about tomorrow. Because once your business is in full swing, you continuously need certain items, and you must depend solely, you can't depend solely on maybe one supplier, okay, or have that adversarial attitude. You need to have a closer buyer-supplier relationship. Because once you know a supplier, once a supplier knows you, it will be difficult for the supplier to give you substandard product. But once the relationship is adversarial, assuming you are in a Trotsky, moving from Tesano Junction to one place, okay, maybe Domi, and you wanted to buy bread. Do you think that the seller there is interested to satisfy you? No, because that interaction might be the only interaction you will ever have with that particular supplier. But the moment you develop the relationship, the moment the supplier knows you, the moment you know the supplier, you know where you can see the supplier, meet the supplier can't give you bad product, because once you take the bad product home and you realize that the product is in bad state, you can return it. But the other supplier will give you bad product because there's no way you can return with the product. You might not even see the supplier again. So it is no more adversarial. It is a closer buyers supplier relationship. So that is where we have gotten to. So supplier development, partnership, supplier design involvement, life cycle cost, and long-term supplier contract relationship, strategic cost management, integrated internet linkages, and shared databases are now seen as ways to create new value within the supply chain. Any question up to this point? So this is where we have got into. It didn't start from today. It started from somewhere. And then gradually over time, we are getting to know things. That is why now institutions are registering. Some of them have registered their suppliers. They have a database of their suppliers. And the reason is straightforward. They want to know where they are getting their suppliers from. And then they evaluate their supplier. There's something we call supplier appraiser. Any question up to this point? So, okay, Mr. Jamra, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So, sir, still on the evidences of the evolution.
Yeah.
Can one also say that during the colonial period, when the Europeans came to Gold Coast, for example, and traded in raw materials, for example, the timber, where they also gave people at the time some items in an exchange. Can we say it also formed part of the evolution
Why not?
evidences?
Why not? This is barter trade. So if they wanted to get anything in return for anything, that is what they did. That was the order of the day. Okay.
All right.
Initially, when they came, they were using guns. Okay.
Yeah.
But later they said, no, they have gold, they have this, they have this. Let us give them this so that we get this. In that way, there was no friction. In fact, the relationship was cordial because the Ghanaians were getting certain items from them. They were not being forced. Okay. They were not being killed. There was nothing like that. That was proper business interaction. So all these supported what we are doing today.
All right, sir.
Any other? Okay, so according to, I think, Rick and Long simplify the evolution, and they focus primarily on procurement focus. Procurement focus. Once you undertake procurement activity, what is the focus? What are you focusing on? And according to Rick and Long, initial stage, this first stage, according to them, it was what we call product-centered. So anytime there was a procurement process, purchasers were looking at or were concerned with the 5 rights, which concentrate exclusively upon the procurement of tangible product and outcome dimensions. So right quantity, right price, right this. So the tangibles, they were interested in their product. Okay. So once the product is good, once the price is okay, once the quantities are within what we want, That was the procurement focus. So initially, according to Rick and Long, that this is the first stage of the evolution. And then over time, it progressed. I think I saw a hand.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. This is Harrison. So please, if I may ask, when you say the Rec and Long model, please, can you give a better explanation? I mean, what does it mean? The Rec and Long model.
Okay. So I said that we have other scholars. People are trying to contribute to the development of, the discipline, procurement. Okay.
Okay.
So with the evolution, how procurement started, it didn't start from, you see, when your parents gave birth to you, you were not like this. Okay. You were a baby. Okay. And then gradually now you were a big man. You get it? So that is the evolution of you. When you talk about your evolution, that is how it started. So I've given you some period, and according to these particular scholars, Rick and Long, they are scholars. So they have a model for the evolution. So according to their model, the evolution of procurement, purchasing through the procurement, has 4 stages. Okay. So according to them, the first stage is product centered. So once we talk about procurement, the focus was on the products.
Yeah.
According to them, it was on the product. So once the product is okay, once the price we pay was okay, once we get the needed quantity, that was the focus. Okay. And then over time, it progressed to the second stage. The second stage is known as what? Process centered.
Okay.
So the process centered moves beyond a concern with outcomes and begins to measure the process through which the outcome is delivered. So the interesting thing about this model is that once you progress to the next stage, you don't ignore the previous stage. You build on the previous stage. So even though we are interested in the product, that is the first stage. Now we are showing concern with the processes leading to the product.
Yes, sir.
So let me give you a typical example. So you are there, maybe I used to love a particular food joint. So anytime you go to that restaurant, you enjoy the food. So the focus is on the product, the final product, the outcome. The food is nice. But over time, you may think to know the processes leading to the food, the final product you enjoy. Now, if you've been following social media, people are talking about plantain chips and all that. Why? It is because of the process. Now, people are not interested in just the product. They are interested in what? The processes leading to the final product. The final product. So concepts like, you see, organizations will now undertake what we call site visit. Why are they doing that? It is because they want to acquaint themselves with the processes. It is not just the product. So we are getting the product from you. Fine. The product is okay. But we want to visit your organization to ascertain certain things ourselves, so that we can confidently say that the company's product and processes are top-notch, are okay. You got it? So the first stage was just the product stage, and then we move to the second stage, which is the process stage. So product is okay, but we are interested in the processes leading to the final product. So once the processes are not good, then you can avoid the product. That is what it means. Once the processes are not good, then the product is delusional. We need to run away from the product. So you are there. You are a procurement officer. A supplier, maybe you procure wood materials. Maybe you procure furniture from a particular company. And then later realize that the company is just destroying the forest. You can't just ignore this. Because you are getting the product is of high quality, the price is competitive, you don't care about the processes leading to the product, then I'm sorry, you are doing something wrong, because you need to focus about the processes. Because once the supplier is not conscious of the environment, so concepts like sustainable procurement is as a result of the processes. Green procurement, green logistics, all that. It is because of the processes. It is because now we are focusing on the processes as well. I don't know if you get it. If you have issues, kindly ask. And this is specifically coming from these scholars, Rick and Long. They came out with this model. So that is why we call the model the Rick and Long model. Okay, so the evolution, it started from there. And then we came to relational stage, the third stage. So process and relationally focused expanded to include procurement supplier relationship. I've already mentioned relationship, the importance of having relationships in procurement. So buyer supplier relationship started from, according to Rick and Long, the third stage. So the processes are good, the product is good, the processes are good. What about relationship? I said that sometimes you do not have that financial resource to directly acquire goods. But because of your ability to have established a very good relationship with the supplier, contractor, you'll be able to get certain things done. Sometimes by just a call, all the needed items are supplied without paying anything. Payment will follow later. It's because of the relationship. It's because of the relationship. Let me tell you one thing. During, I have 2 masters. So during one of my masters, I was in class with an engineer, a very prominent engineer. He works with one of the metropolitan assemblies in Ghana. He's a metropolitan engineer. So at one point in time, this is about 5-6 years ago, a company contracted me to do something. So during the negotiation, I don't know, I met this mate of mine, the engineer for this assembly. So the moment the engineer saw me, said, "Hey, I can't do this because I wanted to actually beat these people. But because the guy saw me, we were mates. In fact, he was rich. During my school days, he was rich. So anytime after lectures, he would take us to this fufu joint somewhere and go and eat fufu. He would sponsor everything." So when we met, engineer called me and said, "Hey, Boaben, why did you decide to come here?" Now I had made a lot of plans to make a lot of money from this engagement. But because you are here, I can't do it.
Move now, sir.
I say, I told Zoom. And I was somehow disappointed because Marcel will be plans. So you get it. So it was because of what? The acquaintance, because we were friends. We are still friends. I still talk to him. You get it. So that is that. Relationships are very good. Very, very good. So you see, let me give you this. Some students are very close to lecturers. And I'm talking about, the good ones will not, in any other form of relationship, but they are very close. They relate well with their lecturers. Okay, whether they are males or female, they relate well with their lecturers. And such students, research has shown that they do well in examination. You know why? It's not because maybe they always get the best answers. It's because of the relationship. So sometimes soft marks are given to such students. Do you know that? Once you are cool with some people, so you call it soft marks. A friend of mine will say compassionate marks are given to such people. You get it? So me, anytime I'm marking, I try to mark those I know. Because you see, in examination, you don't write your names. You don't write your names on the script. You only write your index numbers. And I can't memorize index numbers. In fact, I'm not good at numbers. So I'll try to check, that's my friend. Let me mark before I sit down to mark the other papers. So relationship is good. Relationship is good. But you need to have very good relationship, not the other relationship. I know what, don't misunderstand me. You need to have established good relationships. So relationships are good. You need to develop it, not only in procurement, in other engagement, relationships are always good. You get it? Some people, they are married, but they don't have a very good relationship. They are married, they are couple, but the relationship is not that good. So relationship is good. Then we come to the last stage, according to Rick and Long, performance-centered. Performance-centered. So focus on best product management methods, employs an integrated methodology to manage relationships, process, and outcomes. So here it is more comprehensive. So before we select supplier A over supplier B, we will look at the product, we will look at the processes, and then we also consider the relationship. Then finally, we say that supplier A performs better in the evaluation process than supplier B. So we are selecting supplier A or contractor A or consultant A over other contractors because of their performance during the evaluation process. It's not because we are from the same village or we attended the same uni. No, it is because at the end of the evaluation process or the appraisal process, A excel better than all the other suppliers, all the other tenderers. That is why the entity is selecting supplier A, contractor A, or consultant A to undertake or provide that procurement, process for the organization. Any question? I am done with this. Any question from Rick and Lon? I think that is done with the processes. The phase according to Rick and Long. Any question? Any question? So some years ago, I can't actually tell the years, but some years ago when we used to have polytechnics in Ghana. Now I don't think we have any polytechnics in Ghana, do we? They were offering HND purchasing and supply. Most of these courses have changed, have transmogrified to something else. I don't know if you have paid attention to that.
Yeah, they used to call it PS.
PS. Yes, purchasing and supply. Why? Now it is what? Procurement and supply. Procurement and supply. Secondly, let's look at CIPS. CIPS. This is a UK professional certificate or certification for those in procurement related. It used to be Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply, but now it has changed. So it is not purchasing and supply anymore. It is procurement and supply. It is because of the evolution. That is where we are all going. So they have all recognized the fact that, yes, it started with purchasing. Now we are in the era of what? Procurement, because procurement is bigger, wider than purchasing. And the evolution started with purchasing, but now we are in the era of procurement. So I am done. I told you the other day that I have another lecture with the regular school. So I will end here today. If there are questions in the next 5 minutes, we need to consider all the questions. I'm told next weekend. I don't know if it's next weekend. Are we doing face-to-face next weekend or next 2 weeks?
Yeah, next weekend.
Next week.
Next weekend. Yes. So
Yes, sir.
next weekend we are meeting face to face. So we meet at Tesano. So
Is it
in
the
the
business school, sir?
no,
Is it the business school?
no, we are meeting at Tesano main campus.
Main campus, okay.
But I have another lecture now with students at the business school. So that's what I said.
Okay.
So if there are questions, go ahead. Thank you.